shattered vows and the symphony of revenge. In the quaint town of Willowbend, nestled between rolling hills and dense woodlands, life had always moved at a languid, predictable pace. For Samuel Hargrave, this predictability was a source of comfort. A devoted husband, successful architect, and lover of simple pleasures, he had built a life with his wife Elena, a woman whose beauty turned heads and whose laughter at one time had been his greatest joy. But one evening, the rhythm of Samuel's life changed forever. Returning early from a business trip, a surprise meant to rekindle the waning spark in their marriage, Samuel found the house eerily quiet. The faint sound of laughter filtered through the bedroom door. It was a sound he recognized, but it was intertwined with another, a voice not his own. Peering through the crack in the door, Samuel's heart fractured as he witnessed Elena entwined with another man. His world, once so solid and secure, crumbled into a heap of betrayal and disbelief. He left without a sound, vowing that his revenge would be as calculated as the blueprints he drafted for a living. The blueprint of vengeance Samuel didn't confront Elena immediately. Instead, he donned the mask of a doting husband, meticulously gathering evidence and devising a plan. He began by hiring a private investigator to uncover the extent of Elena's deceit. The results were damning. This was no fleeting mistake. It was a months-long affair. Samuel turned his pain into focus, sketching his vengeance like an architect crafting his magnum opus. Each detail was precise, every contingency accounted for. Step one was financial control. Without Elena noticing, Samuel began shifting assets into accounts under his name, consulting a trusted lawyer to ensure his actions were within the bounds of legality. By the time he was done, Elena's access to their shared wealth was reduced to the bare minimum. Step two was public perception. Samuel hosted a lavish party to celebrate their wedding anniversary, inviting friends, family, and influential figures in Willowbend. The night was filled with laughter, speeches, and nostalgia. Samuel made sure to play the perfect husband, casting no shadow of doubt on their seemingly idyllic marriage. Unbeknownst to Elena, Samuel had prepared a presentation, a slideshow of their life together. As the final slide appeared, it showcased not their happiest moments, but rather photographic evidence of her infidelity. The room fell silent, gasps echoing as faces turned toward the couple. Elena's face drained of color as Samuel stood, his voice calm but laced with emotion. "I wanted everyone to see the truth of what love means to us," he said, his gaze fixed on Elena. "To some it's sacred, to others it's disposable." The final act, the aftermath, was swift. Elena's social circle turned cold, her reputation tarnished. Samuel filed for divorce, presenting the evidence in court and securing a favorable settlement that left Elena with little more than her dignity, what little of it remained. But Samuel's revenge didn't end there. The man with whom Elena had betrayed him? Samuel tracked him down, learning that he too was married. Armed with this knowledge, Samuel reached out to the man's wife, delivering the evidence with the same precision he had employed throughout his plan. The ripple effects of Samuel's actions left no stone unturned, but in the end, his vengeance wasn't about destruction. It was about reclaiming his life, his dignity, and his peace. Epilogue. Months later, Samuel found himself standing on the cliffs overlooking the Willowbend Valley. The sun set in a blaze of gold and crimson, painting the world in hues of renewal. For the first time in months, he felt light, free from the weight of betrayal. Samuel didn't believe in happy endings anymore, but he believed in new beginnings. And in the quiet of that evening, he resolved to build a life as beautiful and enduring as the structures he designed, a life where trust, honesty, and resilience would be his foundation. And so, the man who had been broken by betrayal became stronger in its wake, his story a testament to the power of careful planning and the resilience of the human spirit. Would you like to add or refine any details, or shall we explore another theme? The Web Titans. Though the public exposure of Elena's infidelity had delivered a decisive blow, Samuel knew that true revenge was not about a single act. It was about ensuring that justice rippled outward, touching every corner of the deception. Betrayal, he believed, should not be allowed to fester in the shadows. It should wither under the spotlight. As Samuel moved on with his life, he continued to orchestrate subtle consequences for Elena and her paramour, Gregory, Elena's collapse with. Her social standing in tatters, Elena found herself ostracized from the very circles she had once thrived in. Invitations to luncheons and charity galas dwindled. Former friends whispered behind her back. Even her professional life suffered, as whispers of her scandal reached her workplace, staining her reputation. Samuel, of course, made no move to intervene. He let the consequences of her actions unfold naturally, quietly satisfied that the groundwork he'd laid was bearing fruit. But he wasn't content to stop there. The wolf, in sheep's clothing, Gregory, the man with whom Elena had betrayed Samuel, was a businessman with a carefully crafted public image. His success hinged on the trust of investors, clients, and partners. Samuel saw an opportunity to dismantle Gregory's empire as methodically as he had built it. Using his connections, Samuel unearthed financial irregularities in Gregory's business dealings. A subtle tip to the local press, coupled with an anonymous report to regulatory authorities, set off a chain reaction. Investigations ensued, leading to fines, legal battles, and a loss of investor confidence. As Gregory's world crumbled, his once loyal allies abandoned him. His wife, armed with the evidence Samuel had provided, filed for divorce, taking a significant portion of his dwindling assets. A glimmer of light amid the chaos, Samuel began to rebuild his own life. He immersed himself in his architectural projects, designing buildings that reflected the resilience and beauty he had rediscovered within himself. One day, during a charity event he had helped organize, Samuel met a woman named Clara. She was intelligent, kind, and unpretentious, a stark contrast to Elena. Clara had her own scars, having endured betrayal in her past. Their shared experiences created an immediate bond, and for the first time in years, Samuel felt a flicker of hope for the future. The reckoning months later, Samuel's path crossed with Elena's once more. She appeared at his office unannounced, her once vibrant confidence replaced by desperation. "Samuel," she pleaded, "I made a mistake. I see that now. Can we start over?" Samuel regarded her with a calm detachment. "Elena," he said, "starting over requires trust, and that's something you shattered. I don't hate you anymore, but I don't love you either. I've moved on." Elena's face fell, and she left without another word. Closure Samuel's revenge had been complete, but it hadn't consumed him. He had ensured that the consequences of betrayal were felt by those who had wronged him, but he had also found a way to rise above it, creating a life that was stronger, richer, and more fulfilling. With Clara by his side, Samuel finally understood that the greatest revenge was not just in orchestrating justice, but in reclaiming his own happiness and leaving the pain of the past behind. As he stood before a new project, a community center designed to bring people together, he realized that life, like architecture, was about building something meaningful from the rubble of what had been destroyed. And so, Samuel Hargrave turned the page on his past, ready to write a future filled with purpose, peace, and perhaps even love. Would you like me to expand on Samuel's journey, his relationship with Clara, or any other element of the story? The shadows of justice. Even as Samuel began to move forward with his life, there was a part of him that lingered in the shadows of his revenge. While the collapse of Elena's and Gregory's worlds brought satisfaction, a whisper of restlessness remained in his heart. Was it truly enough to let the storm pass and leave the ruins behind? Or did he need one final act to close the chapter completely? A plan unfolds. Samuel, ever meticulous, decided his last move would not just be about retribution, but also a reclamation of his narrative, a way to ensure his story did not end as a victim of betrayal, but as a man who turned devastation into triumph. He began by commissioning a memoir, anonymously penned, chronicling the story of his marriage, Elena's betrayal, and the methodical journey of his revenge. However, Samuel ensured the book was not a vindictive exposé. Instead, it was a tale of resilience, wisdom, and the strength to rebuild after betrayal. The details were altered just enough to protect his identity while leaving the lessons universal. He worked closely with the writer, weaving in insights on trust, the fragility of relationships, and the power of personal transformation. When the book was complete, Samuel arranged for its publication under the title Blueprints of Betrayal, Rebuilding After the Fall. The book gained traction, resonating with readers who had faced their own struggles with infidelity and heartbreak. It became a bestseller, catapulting its anonymous author into the public eye. Unbeknownst to most, Samuel had not only shared his story, but also turned it into a source of profit and influence. Elena's reaction, as word of the book's success spread, Elena inevitably discovered its existence. She read it in secret, recognizing the parallels to her own life. Every page was a mirror reflecting her choices, her betrayals, and her fall from grace. For the first time, she was forced to confront the depth of the pain she had caused. Elena reached out to Samuel once more, not with pleas for reconciliation, but with an apology. "I don't deserve forgiveness," she admitted, her voice heavy with regret, "but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." Samuel listened, his expression unreadable. "Apology accepted," he said after a long pause. "Not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger is a weight I no longer wish to carry." Gregory's downfall. While Elena sought redemption, Gregory's story took a darker turn. His business empire had been dismantled, his family estranged, and his reputation irreparably tarnished. Struggling to rebuild, he attempted to contact Samuel, desperate to understand why his life had unraveled so completely. Samuel's response was a single curt message: "Actions have consequences. Consider this your lesson." A legacy. Forged years passed, and Samuel's life flourished. His architectural firm expanded, his designs celebrated for their innovation and beauty. His relationship with Clara deepened, blossoming into a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. Together they created a life filled with purpose, joy, and a shared determination to help others find strength in adversity. The memoir became the foundation of a broader movement. Samuel launched workshops and seminars, offering guidance to those grappling with betrayal and heartbreak. His story, once rooted in vengeance, transformed into a beacon of hope for others. Epilogue, the final chapter on. A crisp autumn evening, Samuel found himself standing on the terrace of his latest project, a sanctuary for survivors of domestic and emotional trauma. The building's design was inspired by the idea of healing. Open spaces for reflection, sturdy foundations symbolizing resilience, and skylights that bathed the interiors in warm, natural light. As the first guests arrived, Samuel watched from the shadows, content to let his work speak for itself. Clara joined him, slipping her hand into his. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," Samuel admitted, his gaze steady. "But not with anger. It's like an old blueprint, something to learn from, not to live in." And with that, Samuel Hargrave left behind the last remnants of his revenge. stepping fully into a future defined not by the betrayals of the past, but by the beauty he had built in its wake. Samuel's journey. A life rebuilt. Samuel Hargrave's life was a testament to the adage that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. The betrayal that had once threatened to shatter him became the crucible in which he transformed, emerging as a man not only resilient, but profoundly changed. A new vision. After the storm of betrayal subsided, Samuel poured his energy into his architectural career, using his craft as a means of expression and healing. His designs became bolder, more personal, and more meaningful. No longer content with creating functional structures, Samuel began designing spaces that told stories and fostered community. One of his most celebrated projects was the Phoenix Center, a sprawling complex built on the outskirts of Willow Bend. Designed as a haven for those who had endured loss or hardship, the center featured meditation gardens, therapy rooms, and art studios. Each element of the design symbolized renewal, from the flowing water features to the towering archways that let in light. The spaces we inhabit shape the lives we live, Samuel often said, a sentiment that resonated with clients and critics alike. Love rekindled. Samuel's relationship with Clara, a psychologist specializing in trauma, grew naturally from their shared values and experiences. Their connection was built not on the intoxicating rush of infatuation, but on the steady foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Clara had her own scars, having endured betrayal in a previous marriage. But where Samuel had chosen a path of calculated vengeance, Clara had chosen forgiveness and introspection. Their differing approaches became a source of balance in their relationship. Clara taught Samuel to soften his edges, to let go of the lingering bitterness he hadn't even realized he was holding. In turn, Samuel helped Clara see the strength in confronting pain head-on, in reclaiming agency, and crafting a life of intention. One quiet evening, as they walked hand in hand through the Phoenix Center's gardens, Samuel proposed. The ring wasn't ostentatious, but was crafted with the same care and precision that defined everything he did. Clara said yes, tears of joy filling her eyes. A man of legacy, Samuel's personal transformation wasn't just reflected in his relationships or his career, but also in the way he chose to engage with the world. He began mentoring young architects, emphasizing the importance of designing not just for beauty, but for impact. He also partnered with Clara to create a foundation that funded initiatives for emotional and psychological healing. Workshops, scholarships, and support groups flourished under their leadership, touching countless lives. Despite his growing influence, Samuel remained humble, always crediting his success to the lessons he had learned through hardship. "I didn't rebuild alone," he often said, acknowledging the support of friends, mentors, and even strangers who had played a role in his journey. The echoes of the past, though Samuel rarely thought of Elena or Gregory, their impact on his life lingered in subtle ways. He harbored no hatred for them, only a quiet gratitude for the way their betrayal had pushed him to grow. Elena, now living in a distant city, had found her own path to redemption, working as a counselor for women, navigating the fallout of infidelity, both as victims and perpetrators. Gregory, on the other hand, had faded into obscurity, his once grand ambitions reduced to a modest existence. Samuel never sought contact with either of them again. Their chapters in his life had closed, and he was content to leave them in the past. The sunset years. As Samuel aged, his legacy only grew. The Phoenix Center expanded, with new branches opening in cities across the country. His memoir, Blueprints of Betrayal, became a classic, reprinted in dozens of languages and adapted into a critically acclaimed film. In his later years, Samuel and Clara retreated to a modest but beautiful home overlooking the valley of Willow Bend. Surrounded by nature, they spent their days gardening, reading, and hosting gatherings for friends and family. One day, as Samuel sketched in his notebook, Clara asked him, "If you could go back and change anything, would you?" Samuel smiled, setting down his pencil. "Not a thing," he replied. "Every misstep, every wound, every moment of pain, it all brought me here, and here is exactly where I want to be." With those words, Samuel closed the book on a life well lived, his journey a beacon for others, a reminder that even the deepest betrayals can lead to the most profound transformations. Threads of deception. Samuel Hargrave sat in his study, the faint glow of his desk lamp illuminating a folder thick with evidence. Months had passed since the day he discovered Elena's betrayal, yet the need to understand the full scope of her deceit gnawed at him. This wasn't just about infidelity, it was about uncovering the truth and confronting the depth of her duplicity. He had already hired a private investigator, Martin Graves, whose reputation for discretion and thoroughness was unmatched. Martin had spent weeks piecing together a puzzle that spanned secret rendezvous, hidden communications, and financial discrepancies. What Samuel was about to uncover would prove more intricate and devastating than he had imagined. The paper. Trail. The investigation began with Elena's phone records, which revealed a pattern of late-night calls and messages to a number Samuel didn't recognize. Martin traced the number to Gregory Morton, a real estate developer with a reputation for charm and questionable ethics. Bank statements painted an even more damning picture. Charges for expensive dinners, boutique hotels, and luxury gifts were buried among routine expenses. Some were paid with joint accounts, others from a separate account Elena had opened without Samuel's knowledge. But the most shocking revelation came from Martin's surveillance reports. Gregory wasn't the only man Elena had been involved with. While Gregory appeared to be her primary affair, there were others. Fleeting encounters that hinted at a deeper pattern of deception. Confronting the depths, Samuel's emotions oscillated between fury and heartbreak as he pored over the evidence. He hadn't just been betrayed by his wife, but by the person he had trusted most in the world. Yet he knew that confronting Elena without a plan would be fruitless. He needed to stay composed, strategic, and one step ahead. Reaching out to Gregory, intrigued by Gregory's role in the affair, Samuel decided to confront the man himself. Through Martin, Samuel arranged a meeting under the guise of a potential business collaboration. Gregory was charming, as expected, but he couldn't hide his discomfort when Samuel steered the conversation toward personal matters. "I understand you have a close relationship with my wife, Elena," Samuel said, his voice calm but firm. Gregory's confidence faltered. I think you're mistaken," he stammered. Samuel leaned forward, sliding a photograph across the table, a candid shot of Gregory and Elena at a secluded cafe. "Mistaken?" Samuel asked, his tone icy. "I suggest you think carefully about your next words." Gregory's bravado crumbled. "Look, I didn't mean for this to happen," he admitted. "It started as a fling. I didn't think it would go this far." Samuel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he let the silence stretch, watching Gregory squirm. Finally, he said, "You've made your choices, Gregory. Now, you'll live with the consequences." Unveiling the truth to Elena. Samuel knew the time had come to confront Elena. He prepared meticulously, gathering all the evidence into a single binder. When the moment arrived, he chose their dining room, a space once filled with laughter and love, but now shadowed by betrayal. As Elena entered the room, her expression shifted from curiosity to apprehension at the sight of the binder on the table. "Sit," Samuel said, his voice devoid of warmth. "What's going on?" she asked hesitantly. Samuel slid the binder toward her. "Open it." Elena's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, photos, receipts, messages, and reports. Her face paled and tears welled in her eyes. "Samuel, she began, but he cut her off. "Don't," he said sharply. "I've heard enough lies. What I want now is the truth. How long, Elena? How long have you been making a fool of me?" She hesitated, then broke down. "It started a year ago," she admitted. "With Gregory. I don't know why. I felt neglected. I felt lost. But it was a mistake, Samuel. A terrible mistake." "A mistake?" Samuel's voice rose. "A mistake is spilling coffee, Elena. What you did was a series of deliberate choices, a campaign of deceit. Don't insult me by calling it a mistake." The plan unfolds. Samuel didn't let his anger consume him in that moment. Instead, he outlined his terms for what would come next. Immediate separation. Elena was to leave the house that evening. Legal consequences. Samuel had already consulted his lawyer and filed for divorce. The evidence of her infidelity would ensure he retained the lion's share of their assets. Reputation management. Samuel intended to share the truth with their friends and family, not out of spite, but to ensure that Elena couldn't spin the narrative in her favor. Elena, cornered and overwhelmed, had no choice but to comply. Justice. And closure. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, Samuel made good on his promises. He ensured the financial settlement was fair but uncompromising. The return of deception. Months after Samuel finalized his divorce, life had begun to settle into a new rhythm. He focused on his work, his hobbies, and the friendships that had weathered the storm of betrayal. The emotional wounds were healing, but scars remained, faint reminders of a trust that had been shattered. Meanwhile, Elena's life had taken a downward turn. Her reputation tarnished, her social circle diminished, and her financial security compromised. She struggled to adapt. The affair with Gregory had ended bitterly, leaving her with little more than regret. But patterns, as Samuel would soon learn, often have a way of repeating themselves. A new beginning? One day, Elena reached out to Samuel. Her voice on the other end of the line was subdued, a shadow of the confident woman he once knew. "Samuel, I've been reflecting," she said. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted to apologize again. Truly. For everything." Samuel listened in silence, his emotions a mix of skepticism and residual pain. "What do you want, Elena?" he finally asked. "Nothing," she replied quickly. I'm trying to start over. I wanted to make amends, even if it's just with words." Samuel wasn't entirely convinced, but he let the conversation end on a polite note. The cycle begins. Anew unbeknownst to Samuel, Elena's starting over involved a new relationship. She had begun dating a man named Victor, a wealthy entrepreneur known for his charisma and sharp business acumen. On the surface, it seemed like Elena had finally found stability, but cracks soon began to show. Friends of Victor noticed inconsistencies in Elena's stories about her past. Whispers of her affair with Gregory began to circulate, and suspicions grew about her fidelity. Victor, an astute man, hired a private investigator to verify his doubts. What the investigation uncovered was painfully familiar. Elena was involved, with yet another man, this time a colleague from her new job. Samuel's involvement by coincidence or fate, Victor and Samuel crossed paths at a charity event. The two struck up a conversation, unaware of their shared connection to Elena. Eventually, Victor mentioned his suspicions about his girlfriend's behavior, though he refrained from naming her. Intrigued by the parallels, Samuel pressed gently for details. When Victor finally revealed Elena's name, Samuel's expression hardened. "I know her well," he said, his tone measured. "And if you're asking whether she's capable of deception, the answer is yes." Victor was taken aback but appreciated Samuel's candor. Over the next few weeks, the two men formed an unlikely alliance, sharing their experiences and piecing together the timeline of Elena's actions. Confronting the truth, Victor decided to confront Elena directly, inviting Samuel to observe from a distance. In a private meeting, he laid out the evidence of her infidelity. Elena's reaction was a mix of denial, anger, and eventually tears. "Why?" Victor demanded. "Why do you keep doing this?" Elena broke down, admitting that she didn't know how to stop sabotaging relationships. "I chase excitement," she confessed. "I crave validation. But I never meant to hurt anyone." Victor, though hurt, was resolute. "You need help, Elena, but that help won't come from me." The final chapter. For Samuel, witnessing Elena's downfall yet again was a strange experience. It validated his decision to end their marriage, but it also evoked a sense of pity. Despite everything, he wished for her to find a path to healing. Samuel and Victor parted ways amicably, both determined to move forward without resentment. Samuel, now more certain than ever of his own resilience, resolved to focus on building a life grounded in authenticity and trust. As for Elena, her journey remained uncertain. Whether she would confront her destructive patterns or continue down the same path was a question only time could answer. Elena's descent, the struggles of a broken heart. After her confrontation with Victor and Samuel, Elena was left to face a stark reality. The life she had built through deceit was crumbling, leaving her isolated and vulnerable. The lies she had told, the bridges she had burned, and the trust she had shattered all conspired to create a prison of her own making. But within this darkness, Elena began to feel an unfamiliar pull, not of escape or deflection, but of accountability. For the first time, she considered the possibility that her pain and destruction were symptoms of a deeper, unaddressed wound. Seeking redemption alone in her modest apartment, Elena spent hours reflecting on her life. She scrolled through old photos, reliving memories of her marriage to Samuel, her fleeting excitement with Gregory, and the chaotic aftermath of her choices. The patterns were undeniable. Desperate for answers, Elena sought professional help. She found a therapist, Dr. Elaine Carter, who specialized in relationship trauma and self-sabotage. Their first session was awkward, with Elena hesitant to share the full extent of her actions. "I've hurt people," Elena said, her voice trembling. "Good people. I don't know why I keep doing it." Dr. Carter's response was gentle but direct. "Hurt people often hurt others. Let's start by understanding the pain you're carrying." Unpacking the past through therapy, Elena uncovered long-buried truths about herself. She revisited her childhood, marked by a distant father who valued achievement over affection and a mother who masked her unhappiness with performative smiles. Elena learned early on to seek validation through external means, accolades, attention, and the fleeting thrill of admiration. Her pattern of infidelity, she realized, wasn't about the men she cheated with, but about the void she was trying to fill. Each affair was a misguided attempt to feel desired, powerful, and alive, even at the expense of others' trust. Facing the fallout, acknowledging her flaws didn't immediately repair the damage Elena had caused. Friends who had distanced themselves remained wary, and professional opportunities were scarce. The reputation she had once taken pride in was now a liability. One of the hardest moments came when she attempted to reconnect with her estranged parents. Her mother offered polite but detached support, while her father dismissed her entirely, calling her a disgrace to the family name. The rejection stung, but it also served as a catalyst. Elena realized that she could no longer seek external validation. The work of rebuilding her life had to come from within. Steps toward change, Elena immersed herself in therapy, joining support groups for individuals struggling with infidelity and compulsive behaviors. She also began volunteering at a local shelter, For women escaping toxic relationships, a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal and mistrust. Through these experiences, Elena found a sense of purpose. She started mentoring women who had made mistakes similar to her own, sharing her story not as a cautionary tale but as a testament to the possibility of change. The hardest goodbye months into her journey, Elena wrote a letter to Samuel. It wasn't an attempt to reconcile, but an effort to express the remorse she had struggled to articulate in person. In the letter, she wrote, "Samuel, I know I've lost the right to ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see now what I couldn't see before. You gave me everything, and I threw it away, not because of you, but because I couldn't face myself. I'm working on that now. Not for you, not for anyone else, but for me. Thank you for the love you gave me, even when I didn't deserve it. I hope one day I can be someone worthy of the kindness you showed me." Samuel received the letter with mixed emotions. Though he appreciated her honesty, it didn't erase the pain she had caused. Still, he felt a faint sense of closure, knowing she was trying to change. A new chapter years later, Elena had rebuilt her life in small but meaningful ways. She became a counselor, specializing in helping others navigate infidelity and relationship challenges. Her work was a form of penance, a way to channel her past mistakes into something constructive. Though she remained single, Elena found fulfillment in friendships, community work, and personal growth. She learned to find joy in simple moments and to value herself without relying on the validation of others. Her journey wasn't easy, and the scars of her past never fully faded. But for Elena, the struggle to change was its own kind of redemption, a testament to the idea that even the most broken lives can be mended with time, effort, and an unwavering commitment to self-honesty. A fragile heart. Elena's attempt at love again. Years had passed since the chaos of her betrayals, and Elena had worked tirelessly to rebuild herself. Therapy had become a cornerstone of her life, and her role as a counselor brought purpose and meaning. Yet, one area of her life remained untouched: love. For the longest time, Elena avoided relationships altogether, fearing she wasn't ready or deserving. But as the years wore on, she began to wonder if she might have a chance at something real, something honest. A chance encounter. It was during a community outreach event that Elena met Peter Radcliffe. A reserved but kind-hearted man in his early 40s, Peter was a widower who volunteered his time teaching financial literacy to struggling families. Their initial conversations were polite and professional, but there was a warmth to Peter's demeanor that intrigued Elena. Over time, their interactions became more personal, marked by shared laughter and thoughtful exchanges. One evening, as the event wound down, Peter invited Elena for coffee. She hesitated, her old fears bubbling to the surface. But something in his gentle persistence convinced her to say yes. Walking on eggshells, their first few dates were cautious. Elena found herself constantly second-guessing her words and actions, afraid her past would resurface and ruin everything. Peter, perceptive as he was, noticed her hesitance but chose not to press. "I've got my own baggage," he said one evening over a quiet dinner. "We all do. We just have to decide if we're willing to carry it together." Elena nodded, but the weight of her secret felt heavier than ever. The confession, after several months of dating, Elena decided she couldn't continue without telling Peter the truth. One evening, she invited him to her apartment, her heart pounding as she rehearsed her words. "Peter, I need to tell you something," she began, her voice trembling. He leaned forward, concern etched on his face. "What is it?" Elena took a deep breath. "I haven't always been the person you see now. I've made mistakes, big ones. I've hurt people I cared about, betrayed their trust. I've spent years trying to make amends, but I need you to know who I was before we go any further." Peter was silent for what felt like an eternity. Then he asked, "Did you tell me this because you're afraid I'll leave if I find out later?" "Yes," Elena admitted. He nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for trusting me with this. I can't pretend it's easy to hear, but it matters more to me who you are now than who you were then." Building trust. From that moment, their relationship became a delicate dance of vulnerability and trust. Elena worked hard to be open about her fears and insecurities, while Peter offered patience and reassurance. When challenges arose, they faced them together. Peter's understanding nature helped Elena see that love didn't have to be about proving her worth. It could be about growing together. The proposal 2 years into their relationship, Peter proposed during a quiet weekend getaway. He didn't stage a grand gesture, but instead asked Elena during a heartfelt moment on a hike, the sun setting behind them. "Elena," he said, taking her hands in his, "you've shown me that love isn't about perfection. It's about trying every day to be better, for yourself and for the person you care about. I can't imagine trying with anyone else. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Elena's face as she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." A love redeemed, their marriage wasn't without its struggles, but it became a testament to the power of growth and forgiveness. Elena continued her counseling work, often sharing her story to inspire others. With Peter's support, she finally forgave herself for her past mistakes. In doing so, she learned that love, at its best, is about acceptance, not just of each other, but of the flawed, ever-changing human heart. Trials of the heart. Navigating love after betrayal. Elena and Peter's marriage began with a promise of honesty and resilience. Both carried scars, Peter from the loss of his first wife, and Elena from her tumultuous past. While their love was genuine, the journey wasn't without its trials. Each challenge tested their commitment, forcing them to confront their fears, insecurities, and vulnerabilities. The shadow of the past won. Of the earliest challenges arose when Peter's friends and family learned about Elena's history. Despite Peter's assurances, his sister Diane remained skeptical. "Are you sure you can trust her?" Diane asked one evening, her voice laced with concern. "People don't change overnight." Peter defended Elena, but her past was now an unspoken presence at family gatherings. Elena could feel the judgment in Diane's polite but distant demeanor, and it chipped away at her confidence. Peter reassured her. "They'll come around, Elena. They just need time to see the person you are now." But Elena couldn't shake the nagging doubt. What if they're right? What if I hurt him too? Financial strain. Another trial came when Peter's business hit a rough patch. A major client pulled out, leaving him scrambling to make ends meet. The financial strain seeped into their relationship, creating tension where there had once been harmony. "I can pick up extra shifts at the shelter," Elena offered one evening, but Peter shook his head. "This isn't your burden to carry," he said, his pride getting in the way. The stress mounted, leading to arguments over seemingly trivial matters. One night, Peter snapped, "You don't understand what it's like to have everything fall apart." The words stung, reminding Elena of her past mistakes. She walked out of the room, tears streaming down her face, unsure if their love could weather this storm. Temptation and trust. Their most harrowing test came when Elena's ex, Gregory, reappeared unexpectedly. He approached her at a counseling seminar, his familiar charm on full display. "It's good to see you again," Gregory said, his voice low and inviting. "You look incredible." Elena felt a flicker of old emotions, nostalgia, temptation, and the faint pull of familiarity, but she quickly shut it down. "I'm married now, Gregory," she said firmly, "and I'm not that person anymore." When she told Peter about the encounter, his reaction surprised her. "I trust you," he said simply, "but I won't lie. It makes me uneasy." They talked late into the night, airing their insecurities, and reaffirming their commitment to transparency. The loss of a dream. After a year of trying to start a family, Elena and Peter faced the heartbreaking news that they were unlikely to conceive. Naturally, the diagnosis devastated them both, each grappling with the loss of a shared dream. Elena blamed herself, convinced that her past actions had somehow cursed her. Peter, in turn, struggled with feelings of inadequacy, wondering if he'd failed Elena as a husband. It took months of difficult conversations and shared grief to find a way forward. Eventually, they decided to explore adoption, finding hope in the possibility of giving a child a loving home. Growth through adversity. Each challenge brought them closer, forging a bond rooted in mutual understanding and resilience. They learned to communicate openly, even when the conversations were uncomfortable. Peter's family, including Diane, eventually warmed to Elena, seeing the effort she put into being a supportive partner. The financial struggles eased as Peter rebuilt his business, and they celebrated every small victory together. Though they never forgot their pasts, they refused to let those shadows define their future. A renewed love on their 5th wedding anniversary. Peter surprised Elena with a trip to the mountains, where they had shared their first kiss. Sitting together under a canopy of stars, he took her hand and said, "I'm proud of us, not for being perfect, but for trying, every day, to be better." Elena smiled, tears in her eyes. "I wouldn't want to face these challenges with anyone else. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't." Their love, forged through trials, had become something unbreakable, a testament to the power of forgiveness, growth, and the courage to face life's challenges together. Revenge for betrayal, the final act. Samuel thought his life had moved beyond Elena's betrayal. He had rebuilt himself, embraced his freedom, and focused on creating a future that didn't include the woman who had shattered his trust. But closure, as he was learning, wasn't always so linear. Months after his unexpected collaboration with Victor to expose Elena's latest deceit, Samuel found himself face-to-face with an opportunity he hadn't sought but couldn't resist, a chance for true, calculated revenge. An unexpected opportunity one day, while attending a business networking event, Samuel encountered Gregory, Elena's former lover. Gregory, oblivious to Samuel's presence at first, was schmoozing with other attendees, bragging about a new investment he was leading. Samuel listened quietly, piecing together the details. Gregory was starting a luxury boutique hotel chain, seeking high-profile investors to fund his ambitious project. To Samuel, it reeked of overconfidence and desperation, a perfect setup. After the event, Samuel dug deeper into Gregory's venture. It didn't take long to discover cracks in the foundation, inflated projections, poorly vetted partners, and a dependence on quick cash flow. Samuel saw an opening, a way to deliver justice not through anger, but through strategy. Laying the trap, Samuel began by reaching out to Gregory under a pseudonym, posing as an interested investor. Using a network of contacts, he built a credible persona, emails, a website, and even a few planted rumors about his fictitious company's wealth and influence. Gregory, eager for funding, fell for the bait without hesitation. They met several times, with Samuel feigning interest and pressing for details about the project. "I need to ensure this aligns with my portfolio," Samuel said during one meeting, masking his glee as Gregory divulged confidential information about his business. Over weeks, Samuel carefully sowed seeds of doubt among Gregory's real investors. He leaked just enough information, through anonymous tips and strategic whispers, to make them question the venture's viability. The dominoes fall as Samuel's plan unfolded. Gregory's investors began pulling out. Key suppliers backed away, and construction delays mounted. By the time Gregory realized what was happening, it was too late. Desperate, Gregory reached out to Samuel's pseudonym, pleading for the promised investment to save his sinking ship. Samuel, relishing the moment, sent a single reply. "A liar and a cheat should expect nothing less. Consider this my parting gift." Samuel. The realization hit Gregory like a freight train. He tried to recover, but the damage was irreparable. Within months, his project collapsed, leaving him with mountains of debt and a tarnished reputation. Elena's downfall news of Gregory's downfall eventually reached Elena, who had been quietly trying to rebuild her life after her failed relationship with Victor. She had invested what little she had left in Gregory's project, hoping it would be her ticket back to financial stability. Instead, she was left penniless. Her last hope turned to ash. When she discovered Samuel's involvement, a mix of anger and grudging respect washed over her. "He was always smarter than I gave him credit for," she muttered to herself. Samuel's closure. For Samuel, the revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclaiming his power. By dismantling the lives of those who had betrayed him, he found a sense of justice that allowed him to finally close that chapter. As he stood on the balcony of his new home overlooking the city, Samuel reflected on the journey. Revenge hadn't erased the pain, but it had given him the closure he needed to move forward without the weight of unresolved anger. He raised a glass to the night sky. "To new beginnings," he said, smiling to himself.